today, we have a number of distinguished parliamentary representatives from some of the CVF members who have asked to be able to share their views ahead of the broader discussion. I've kept an eye on the Q&A. There are already a number of questions. We will try and get to them as soon as we hear the statements that we will now have shortly. So let me first offer the floor to Honorable Edgar M. Chatto, who is in fact the Committee Secretary on the Committee on Climate Change of the Philippines. Mr. Chatto, would be grateful if you can keep your remark to 2 to 2.5 minutes. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. To all distinguished participants of this high-level Climate Vulnerable Forum, good day. Before I introduce the Speaker of the Philippine House of Representatives, let me share with you that our Department of Energy's recent announcement on the moratorium on new coal sends a decisive signal to domestic and foreign investors financing renewable energy. The House Committee on Climate Change, under my leadership, is in full support of this promotion of sustainable and renewable energy. In fact, the House resolution on environmental and climate emergency calling on the major carbon emitters, local industries, and local government units to pursue renewable and sustainable energy sources was adopted by the House of Representatives today at 7:02 p.m. This is the first climate emergency declaration that is national in scope in the country. Our next speaker is the youngest to have been elected as Speaker of the House of Representatives of the Philippines since the country became a republic. A lawyer by profession, he has also served in the other two branches of government, in the judiciary as a lawyer, in the Supreme Court, and in the executive branch as provincial administrator of the province of Marinduque. As legislator, he has always been a leading advocate of environmental protection and sustainability, and has consistently pushed for sustainable and adequate energy for Filipinos and effective and good governance. He has also been fighting for disaster management and climate change mitigation, and has proposed the establishment of a Department of Disaster Resilience. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow parliamentarians, the Honorable Speaker of the Republic of the Philippines, Lord Allan J. Q. Velasco.
Excellencies, the parliamentarians of the Climate Vulnerable Forum, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. Goni, the world's strongest storm this year, killed at least 22 people in the Philippines, while forcing about 1 million more to evacuate. Goni came a few days after Typhoon Molave, which left at least 16 dead and causing a minimum of 2.66 billion pesos or 54 million US dollars of damage to crops. On November 13, a few days after Goni, Typhoon Vamco hit our country, the 21st typhoon to hit the Philippines this year. Typhoon Vamco caused massive flooding in the northern parts of the country, displacing hundreds of thousands of people and causing about 3.84 billion pesos or 79 million US dollars damage to agriculture. Previously, the record for the world's strongest landfalling tropical cyclone in history was held by super typhoons Meranti and Haiyan, which hit the Philippines in 2016 and 2013 respectively. In the midst of a global pandemic, these typhoons and floods have forced our people to stay in cramped evacuation centers where there is higher risk of transmission of the virus. In the midst of this pandemic, our people are going wet, cold, and hungry. Excellencies, we are your people. Our local emergencies are your global emergencies. The increasingly violent typhoons, hurricanes, and floods caused by climate change are becoming the new normal all over the world and the Philippines has been at the unfortunate receiving end of the worst of them. As parliamentarians of the world's most climate vulnerable countries, we need to set enabling policies that will accelerate our transition to low carbon and climate resilient economies, notwithstanding the COVID-19 pandemic. In the Philippines, the House of Representatives, with the help of the House Committee on Climate Change, maintains close coordination with the Office of the President and the Climate Change Commission to address gaps in climate actions and the implementation of our climate change laws and policies. When the Philippines ratified the Paris Agreement, the government set forth a country-defined timeline to submit the first nationally determined contribution before 2020. The instrument of accession signed by President Duterte was accompanied by a declaration of state that the accession to and implementation of the Paris Agreement by the Republic of the Philippines is for the purpose of supporting the country's national development objectives and priorities, which include sustainable industrial development, eradication of poverty and provision of basic needs, securing social and climate justice, and energy security. The Philippine nationally determined contributions we have set shows the world our resolve to pursue low-carbon development as well as the support we need from developed countries in terms of climate finance, capacity building, and technology transfer in the context of climate justice and in accordance with the Paris Agreement. Excellencies, the need for climate action is as urgent as the need for a vaccine for COVID-19. To this end, I look forward to working with the parliamentarians of the Climate Vulnerable Forum in developing a common legislative agenda that will ensure a world united in pursuing sustainable practices which would significantly abate the effects of climate change, particularly in vulnerable areas in the world. Together, let us deliver on the much-needed policies that will usher a new era of economic development that is founded on sustainability, environmental protection, better risk governance, and climate justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Many thanks to the Honorable Speaker of the House of Representatives of the Philippines, and also to you, Mr. Chatto, for your important messages and for sharing those with us.